Let's review who the winners and losers of the War Within are when it comes to tanking classes. Maybe you want to avoid some classes. Maybe you want to specifically play some. I'll be playing Blood DK no matter what, because I'm just good at the game. Don't matter what they do to them, I'm going to be good at it. But let's see what Bellular has to say about which tanking classes are currently peaking.
Well, tanks, today things are going to be fun, because in a way, you're all a little bit of a loser. Blizzard dropped this. It is a post detailing their vision for the War Within, and it is tanks who are not as self-sufficient, right?
Yeah, basically, I'll sum this up for you. They're diarrhea loading all over tanks, turning us into squishy little soft bitches that just hold aggro. That's all we're going to do. We won't be able to self-heal too well. We won't be able to do damage too well. All we're going to do is hold aggro.
Touch me, fondle me, insert me into the slot, big boy.
Jesus Christ, I left blurps on, didn't I? Yeah, okay, that's exactly why we gotta turn them off, because, you know, chat is just degenerative as shit, but thank you for that. Moving on. The tanking changes suck, and I completely hope that Blizzard reverse these. I can't stand them.
Tanks who rely on their healer to survive. Tanks with less self-healing and quite a lot less in terms of passive damage reduction. Let me tell you, that struck the fear of God into tank commenters. Thankfully, though, the changes are not as brutal as some people have worried. So 3 areas have been impacted. Number 1, self-sustain. Number 2, passive mitigation. And number 3, secondary defensives. Things like Eye of Tyr, losing duration, and consecration, losing damage reduction for paladins.
Yep.
But they're big buttons, right?
Losing the ability to completely heal your dick off as a blood DK sucks.
Ardent Defender
literally goes anti to the class fantasy itself, but here we are.
And Guardian, those went untouched. Or say things like healing getting reduced on the Death Knight's Leeching Strike, Druid's Frenzy Regeneration, and Demon Hunter's Soul Cleave. That kind of thing. So, when you're not popping off your big defensives for big hits, your healer's going to have to spend a little bit more effort topping you up, right? But in a way where that's actually a good thing if they were able to hit their design goals. Essentially, whenever a tank is a massively...
Here's the one thing that healers are going to have to do. Before, really, tanks needed to know when certain mechanics were going to go off, you know, to damage reduction, pop their damage reducing effects and get through it. Now, you know, as if healers didn't have enough to do with healing and dispelling and everything else that they got to do. Now, they also got to understand the mechanics of every fight, because not only is the tank going to have to reduce damage through it, but the healer's going to have to heal them through it, because tanks are not going to be able to handle it on their own anymore. So, if you didn't like playing healer before, you're sure as shit not going to like it now.
Self-sustaining, near unkillable god. The problem is, it's like, well, how do you basically challenge a god? You've got to hit them extremely hard.
I just can't stand these changes. I don't know if you can tell. I just can't stand them. I don't like them at all.
Just getting globaled, and Blizzard basically want to de-escalate that situation. So the idea is that healers, yes, they will just be spending a bit more time, like topping people up, but what we're supposed to get in return for that bargain is less spiky damage and less BS. But of course, well...
yeah, less spiky damage is what Blizzard's trying to do to kind of offset these changes. Healers will hopefully have more time to react with the new model, though. Yeah, maybe. I just feel like it's putting more on healers, and I already feel like there's not enough healers in the game. So I just don't know.
Only time will tell. Going back to the tanks, though, most of you been hit with roughly the same size of nerf bat. I should say, these are not changes in pre-patch. These are things that are going to be there with the expansion launch, so you won't actually feel them yet. The other side of this, then, is what the expansion's dungeons actually feel like. Basically, they're jammed full of mechanics, patrols, chain-casting mobs, and that kind of thing. So knowing your pulls and perfecting your CC, that is going to be more intense and important than ever. Now, sure, that is technically an everyone problem, but we know how World of Warcraft works. For most of you tank players, you're kind of in the role because you got trust issues and you'd rather just do the important shit yourself.
Yeah.
I suppose all I'll say is good luck this time. You'll kind of need it. If you're
I mean, most definitely now, to get a good successful Mythic Plus group, you're going to have a good tank and a good healer. Whereas before, one or the other could kind of offset the other shittiness. If your tank kind of sucks, a really good healer could kind of keep you going. Or if your healer kind of sucks, a really good tank could kind of keep the party going. Now you're really going to need both. You're going to need both, because neither one is going to be able to work without the other anymore. Which is kind of what Blizzard wanted. They wanted it more, you know, interplay and gameplay between players. I don't like the way they went about it.
It's amazing news, but, like, seriously, do expect to have a little bit more of a rough time tanking until people adjust. Now, there is a bit of a silver lining, because despite all of this, 2 specs come out of this transition substantially improved. So it's a lot of fun to have when we dive into these. Of course, supported by today's sponsor. So here's a situation that impacts all of us. Data leaks. Data leaks happens all the time, and like vultures who are hungry for a meal, data brokers harvest up that data, and then you and me have got to deal with spam or worse. Now, your legal right to be removed is hindered by it just taking ages to do and being hard to monitor.
Okay, that's because my armor broke.
Incogni.com/Valular Warcraft comes in to solve the problem for us. They automate the whole process, and with code Valular Warcraft, you get 60% off an annual plan. Now, for an update from me, 57 completed requests, 9 in progress. I've been added to 21 suppression lists, and that means that my data will not be picked up by those brokers again. Now, they've also shipped support for adding even more of your own information there. So as an example, I've added in another home address and another email. So I'll let you know what the results of that are in a little bit. The point is, right, data broker stuff can be spooky. Of course, the data brokers themselves can have data breaches. People can then just use the data that they've harvested for ill. And basically, if there's a bunch of lists out there, those lists are juicy targets, and I'd rather not be on them. And that is why Incogni is a great service. Incogni takes your data down, and then it keeps your data down by continually rescanning. And you can try them out today with 60% off an annual plan at incogni.com/Valular Warcraft.
There it is.
Brewmasters come out on top with the best changes. Bottom bloat is pretty much a thing of the past with the loss of Healing Elixir, White Tiger Statue, and Bone Dust Brew. And also Chi Wave moving to being a passive. There's then a ton of damage smoothing that's added via the new Ox Stance talents that basically just increase how much you're staggering and big hits. So that's really nice. Some removed talents and lowered point costs then just leave you a bit more freed up to pick things within your tree, which does feel quite nice when you're actually building out your character. You've got more access to your immense levels of utility with the class tree changes as well. There's a massive 15% out of combat move speed, which just makes life easier. And on top of that, the tank changes to be a little bit less self-sufficient will, in theory, work a little bit better for you monks because you've got stagger. Those nerfs even came in with a general rebalance so that you guys are a little bit more beefy and a little less reliant on dodges. But sadly, hero talents are both kind of passive and boring. Still, despite that, Brewmaster...
Hey, you guys are talking about Blood DK kind of benefiting from these changes slightly. Yes and no. We were getting nerfed like everybody else. The one thing that's helping Blood DKs a little bit is, yes, we have to heal. It's just part of how we tank. So the Blood DKs essentially now are the only tank that can really heal itself, where the others, the healing reductions almost basically, puts their healing at null and void. So yes, Blood DKs will be one of the better tanks this expansion. Maybe he's going to talk about here in a second. But I still don't like it.
Is just one of the 2 tanks that is coming into the War Within feeling much better than before. The prunings work, the tune-up's good. The other winner then is the Blood DK, and it's a clear winner, but there is a minor caveat, and that's the Death Strike now only heals based on the same damage taken once. So sad. You can't answer getting walloped with an absolutely huge series of heals, which is kind of unintuitive, but it should not be too big of a nerf, because smuggled in with that change is a pretty awesome UI update, actually. The amount the Death Strike heals for is now shown by a buff, and that means that you can track it without using a weak aura, which is pretty big for WoW's baseline playability.
That's
Otherwise,
cool.
The class tree shakeup has been...
So the higher that number goes, the more your Death Strike is going to heal you for. That's pretty nice. I like that.
Excellent. Soul Reaper is a fun addition. Losing a power rune weapon and its juicy haste does suck a little bit, but I think it's overall worth it in the long run. Then the core talent updates are pretty awesome. Bone Storm now spends your bone shield stacks instead of runic power, which brings that back in a pretty huge way. Then Blood Drinker and Consumption are basically turned back into must-have talents by beefing them up quite a bit, and then also adding resource generation to them. Death and Decay uptime is now tantalizing close to 100% with a grace period that effectively extends it by a pretty huge 4 seconds.
That's fine. A lot of Blood DKs have been asking for this Death and Decay, stand in your Death and Decay effect to go away. And it looks like Blizzard doesn't want to take it away, but it's nice to see that at least it's going to be it's going to have like 100% uptime. So you can always just put it down and start tanking and spanking.
Get down to it, so that feels great. And the hero talents, thankfully, are wins. Sandlane adds plenty of fun and fantasy to the spec with massive haste stacking and, of course, Vampiric Aura. Deathbringer then adds the gorgeous Reaper's Mark ability. It turns your Blood Boil blue as well, which is just kind of neat. And basically, it's a strong tank that puts an absolute ton of power in your hands, to the point where Blood may be one of the only examples of WoW having a high skill ceiling that is actually rewarding enough to be worth reaching.
And that's why I play Blood, boys. That's why I play Blood. High skill ceiling. Yep. That's right, and you know the skill ceiling here is sky high. So I love just the interplay with blood. Doing it right really makes you feel invincible. We'll see how it plays out in the War Within, though.
Now, the next winner is Paladin, and that's all down to minor fixes and pretty decent hero talents. On the talent changes, Consecration's 4-second grace period is once again absolutely massive for staying alive on the move.
Of course you do.
Then updates to the spec tree just open up a bit more build flexibility, which is certainly nice. It'll certainly feel good. You'll feel a bit less limited. Things like Soaring Shield and Focused Enmity no longer being a choice node, so that's great. And then in the hero talents, well, Lightsmith allows you to throw weapons that are made of the light at allies for bonus DPS.
It's pretty cool.
It's a really cool fantasy. And then the other one, Templar, is... I mean, it's basically just a very, very cool fantasy-forward, damage-focused alternative. You're raining hammers down, and it feels amazing. Now, Prop Paladin will likely then remain the everyman tank for simple, effective defensives, and just being able to do crazy shit like throwing out a clutch lay in hands and blessings when needed. The only downside then is Word of Glory, where it just does struggle to keep up with the massively ballooning health pools that we're dealing with. And for our last winner, we've got the Warrior, and barely. It is essentially almost gone entirely unchanged with hero.
Mountain Thane is awesome. I've said this every time we've talked about Warrior. Mountain Thane looks great. Thunderclap in the cheeks over and over. It's going to be a good time.
Alan's actually doing the heavy lifting here. But thankfully, both Mountain Thane and Colossus are pretty nice additions to the game. Now, Mountain Thane just adds loads of juice to Thunderclap. Yeah. It adds the wonderful Thunder Blast proc, and it turns Stormbolt into a 3-target stun, which is awesome. Colossus then gives you the Demolish channeled ability, which you're either going to love or hate, but if you love it, you'll probably love it, and it makes you 5% bigger, because every little bit counts, gents. Then you've got the new Fight Through the Flames talent. This will go down pretty well, because it gives you a flat magic damage reduction to defensive stance, and also, defensive stance no longer reduces damage dealt, so that's pretty good too. Now, the class tree changes are not really game-changing here, but they do give you a bit easier access to Shockwave, which is certainly nice. So to bring things together with some of these buffs and the hero talents, Warriors are fun and capable. It would be a different story if they had issues that went unresolved, but honestly, right, going in with a few changes, while it's not a lot, it has just kind of left them in a pretty good state, mostly chilling. They're not perfect, but they're happy enough. Losers then. So, that's Demon good. Hunters, yeah, it's kind of mixed for you.
I mean, to be honest, Demon Hunters were sitting up top for quite a while in this expansion. Demon Hunters have been great. Mythic Plus, I mean, they've been the meta for a little while now, so it's okay if they come down just a little.
You guys, you're basically back down to...
Also, I'm jealous of their mobility. As a Death Knight, I can't stand the fact that they are so mobile.
One sigil charge for everything except Flame, and that does mean say goodbye to your infinite stops and CC. And then there's the hero talents, of course. Aldrachi Reaver throws in a bit of like a witch button first mini game on top of things, but generally it does feel a little bit underwhelming. And to give you some detail on that, every few souls that you eat, it transforms your Throw Glaive into a new attack. And once you use that new attack, then hitting Soul Cleave and then hitting Shear will activate one effect for AoE damage, but if you do Shear and then Soul Cleave, it will increase one target's damage taken for a little bit. And that is kind of cool, but
play with the order.
That's really it. Then Felsguard is entirely just boring passive additions. And that's it. Congratulations. You're still immensely sturdy tanks, right? You've got loads of utility, you've got amazing movement, so... Yes.
So he's not saying they're not good tanks. He's just saying that they're a bit of a loser from the recent changes. In terms they came, you know, the changes affected them in a slightly negative way, but they're by no means not viable as tanks. They're still good tanks.
You're losers because you're not really winning off this expansion.
Yeah, and that's why Dorky says DH is still really good. It is. Yeah, this video is saying the same thing. He's just saying, oh, they came down a little bit because of the recent changes, but they're still one of the better tanks in the game.
Certainly not going to feel the sting as much as our next group. Guardian Druids, literally no talent changes, and your hero talents are a big L. All melee lost talents to give them extra range, and Guardian is of course the only tank who ends up feeling like a real victim of that. Then, Astral Influence does not give you the...
We actually watched a video just the other day about bear tanks and how they're just not that fun. That was one of the main things that came out of it, so I kind of feel bad for Druid tanks right now. But I never feel too bad for Druids because, my god, they have 4 specs. One of them's got to be fun.
Massive thrash and swipe range that it used to, so that'll feel kind of shit. It's minor, but then not having Moonkin form as an option also removes flap, so you can't negate Thaul damage as easily as you could have, then Elun's chosen, right? It's mediocre, the hero talent, and Druids of the Claw is just a little bit better. I mean, it might be fun for min-maxing DPS because of Wild Power Surge, allowing you to shift into cat form for a bit, though most of the tree is like just okay passives, right? So that's just disappointing. The class tree...
Yeah, see, a lot of their shit's passive. Yeah, Dorky said Bear Tank's going to be one of the best. Actually, yeah, simple to play. I think that's the main problem. I mean, maybe some people like brain-dead gameplay. That's kind of... every time I say this, I get comments on the YouTube videos that people say, "Good, they're not that easy to play." I just think that those same people should try Blood DK and see how much more complicated that opener is. Blood DK, you basically needed it like an inscription, like a scroll that you unroll to understand your freaking opener. There's like 36 things to click. I think I have like 10 different hotkeys for my opener, and it's only going to get worse. So yeah, let's just compare and contrast. Yeah, look at how they compare.
Changes did not make the spec any less restrictive, and they offer almost
not easy, but they're much easier than the
upgraded,
other tanks.
which just sounds shit, right? It remains a reasonably easy and effective tank. It's got good enough damage input, but the move to War Within basically changes nothing, and it adds very little. And that does mean that compared to everybody else, Guardian is maybe the tank that is the least clearly designed and the least coherent. It's not bad to play, it's just bloody boring. And that's it for the tanks. Outside, right, of the overall change of how tanking is going to feel, I'd say tanks are actually in a pretty solid place, both as, you know, the individual classes and also as a role. But I would basically say the worst crime here is negligence, right? Just stuff not being done. I mean, we've come a long way from expansions gutting classes entirely or making very controversial changes. If you like your class, you're probably not going to feel awful as you go to play it in this new expansion, but you might be jealous by what some of the other people are getting. And certainly Guardian Druids, all I can say in that is just, what are they doing? What's the vision? And I can't help but think Feral is slowed down a bit, and to many people won't feel as good. Balance is a extremely clear loser, and Guardian is also a clear loser. It just makes me wonder, like, Druid is one of the most popular things in the game. Why are they so conservative with it? Or is it the case it is so popular that they're just afraid to make changes? I don't know. Let me know what you're thinking.
I wouldn't say that, because I feel like Paladins get changed all the time, and that's also one of probably the most popular classes in the game. So that's probably not why. But Druids, like we said, they're still good. They're not. It's not that they're not good. They're just not as I don't know, challenging, which makes them less fun. But some people don't want a challenge. Some people just want to be able to just swipe at everything, and that's what Druids do.
Let me know which one of these is the most alluring to you.
Do the
With
Druid.
that said, if you want to check out something next, we've done videos on both melee and ranged, and healing is to follow.
Nice. So maybe we'll check out those videos when he drops them. Overall, you know, I specifically play Blood. It's decent. But to me, it's the main thing is the making tanks more squishy stuff. I'm afraid of it, but we'll see how it plays out in the War Within.